The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius.
Bending, Not Breaking. Season 3, Episode 16. The Southern Raiders.
And we're back for Bending, Not Breaking.
What? That was a weird tonation that you went. Like the structure of the sounds that you made and the tones that you used seemed very...
I don't ever critique you on your intro.
Seemed very, I don't know, dissonant.
You're not going to call me out for that? I totally do. I critique you almost every time.
It just seemed like... It seemed like you doing that was an act of revenge of some sort.
No.
It just felt targeted and...
I wanted to subvert the power of you having control of the welcome back.
It just seemed off.
I think it seemed on.
It just seemed off. Well, I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
And this is Ben.
And this has been Bending, Not Breaking. And with us, not always, wasn't here.
Bending, not breaking. Okay, I got it.
This is...
What?
Max wasn't here last time.
What?
So all
Yes,
the
I
poor
was.
audio
Max
quality...
is always here in
For
spirit.
episode 15? Yeah, I was here.
Oh, 2 weeks ago.
That is correct.
And he's back now, which is lovely. We love that he's here.
I can't
Max
believe you
is-
forgot that I was here last week.
Max is like super busy all the time now, and we have to like plan around his schedule.
He's got real jobs and real working, and
Unlike
he
me.
does those things, and then does this on the side for no money. We're working on it.
I'm just very kind.
He is very kind. Ben, I love that opening quote.
Thanks.
That was really nice. Because we're going to talk about revenge today.
Yeah.
And it's a really good episode to talk about revenge
I mean,
because
yeah.
like of things that happen.
It actually like came up in the episode twice.
It did. Like the whole thing almost.
Yeah, but like,
was like
literally
about
the word
this.
came up twice.
When you have to point to the screen and be like, there it is.
There it is.
I found it.
You know, the DiCaprio meme?
Yeah, so-
it came up
Uh,
twice.
let's just jump in.
No.
Well, how have you been? If you don't want to jump in, let's talk about you. How's life?
I was thinking you should do your recap.
That's what I was talking about.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
You
do
were just.
the
I thought you were implying you were just going to jump into the conversation about, you
No.
know, all the good stuff that we talk about.
It is an episode that is time for me to do the recap.
Oh, it as always your time to do the recap.
No, but it is this time.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it is.
Pull up the timer.
Yeah.
Let me
I'm
crack
ready.
my knuckles and twist my neck and do all the
On
popping and the
your
things.
Mark.
And let's go ahead and do
set.
this. As the gang wakes up, they are attacked by warships. Appa got to fly out of the fires, and Katara is the one to pull Zuko back into Appa, which is really interesting. Katara is still upset with Zuko, and Katara speaks about Zuko's betrayal, and Zuko goes and asks Sokka about what's going on, and then Katara and him decide that they're going to go try to find the people that hurt her mother, and then they do that, and they go on this journey, and they raid a thing, and then they get more information, and then Katara gets to go see if she wants to actually hurt this guy, and she chooses not to, which is a really brave decision and courageous, and then they fly back.
1.
It was a fun little field trip for them.
Yeah, you see, you had time for that, and then you just like kept going. You almost had a perfect round, and then you ruined it.
I think it was good. I liked it. 9 out of 10.
Wow, listeners, what would you rate that recap? Would you rate it a 9 out of 10?
It was a 9 out of 10. That's why it got that rating. I'm very unbiased.
That's your rating.
Rate that recap.
Thanks, Max.
Max doesn't rate things.
It's great contribution. I loved it.
Revenge. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, just say revenge more.
Revenge.
Yeah,
What is revenge?
Vibes.
Isn't there a show called Revenge?
I don't know. I've never seen it.
It's called Scandal.
No, but I'm pretty sure there's also a show called Revenge.
Revenge?
Ravage?
I'm gonna go look it up. Ben, what's Revenge?
You know,
True Blood?
I don't really know what revenge
Never
is.
watched True Blood. Is it good?
Isn't there a character in this show called Suki?
Suki, yeah.
There's Suki, and then there's Suki, right?
Suki.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah, when we're talking about revenge, we're not talking about the 44-minute drama that started in 2011 and went to 2015 that aired on ABC called Revenge, which is about an emotionally troubled young woman who sets out to exact revenge against the people who wronged her father.
this seems unnecessary.
The show creator,
using
the
the word in the
showrunner,
definition of the
was
word.
Mike Kelly.
Yeah, you're not defining
Starred
revenge.
Madeline Stowe, Emily Van Camp, Gabrielle Mann. These were people on the show
I
Revenge.
feel like I'm learning
89
less and
episodes.
less about revenge as
Do
you
you
talk.
mean Gabriel Man, the guy who sings "Okay Alone"?
Can you sing that? I've never heard that song.
Or you could just tell me what revenge
I know.
means.
Okay, it's all right with me. I know that one.
That's not Gabriel Man.
No, I can't help you there.
I'm about to take revenge for y'all wasting my time.
Is that how that works? What are you?
No.
What are you avenging? What are you revenging? You revenger.
My loss of time.
All right.
Do you take revenge,
Or do you exact revenge?
or do you
Give revenge?
Or avenge and
do you
revenge the same
exact
thing.
revenge, or do you estimate revenge?
You know, we've done a whole lot of talking about revenge without talking about revenge.
I'm revengelical.
Okay. All right, we're moving on. So, dictionary.com has revenge as to exact punishment or expiation for a wrong on behalf of, especially in a resentful or vindictive spirit. And the example they give is he revenged his murdered brother.
So wouldn't that be the same as avenged?
I don't know.
What's the difference?
I don't know. But the other definition
Y'all seem well prepared for this.
I
to
actually
take-
took notes on
is
this,
to
and
take
yet this did not
vengeance
come up.
for, to inflict punishment, or to avenge. That's the second definition. So, moral of the
What if
story.
the Avengers was called the Revengers?
That wouldn't sound as good.
What was the Revenge cinematic universe?
Uh-huh.
Oh, it seems like avenge would be I'm avenging someone else or another entity, or revenge is more for personal gain
Interesting.
or personal retribution.
Yeah. Cool.
That's
cool.
okay. Learn something new. Revenge.
Yeah.
It's a two-headed rat viper, man.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. For sure.
Which, all right. So what do you want to jump in? What was the moment of revenge? Besides that moment, first of all, good for Aang for just being this podcast for a minute, or
Yeah.
us trying to be
Aang.
Aang.
I love how you worded that. Aang we should, dang.
We should get Aang as
We
a
should get
guest.
Aang
yeah,
as a
the
guest.
character, not the actor.
We could do both.
Yeah. Anyways,
Anyway, so I want to start from the beginning. So the narrative, the intro, is it's not about revenge, right? So the Fire Nation 100-Year War, they've been the worst. And Katara in the intro, I do not sense her in that intro saying, I want to get revenge. What I do sense is something else. And so it's about saving the world. It's about justice. It's about doing what's right.
Balance.
It's not about revenge. It's not about vindictive exacting on one's behalf, right?
Correct.
Right? And so I'm interested to, as we talk through this episode, to talk about the motivational quality of revenge, if that makes sense.
what drives someone to need to exact revenge?
And what is a more powerful motivator?
Yeah.
Because frankly, I would argue, based off just that example, that revenge isn't necessarily something that's going to motivate the world for change, right? However, saying, hey, I want justice, that seems like a more powerful motivator. I don't know. Something to consider. I don't have very much data for that.
Well, I think for me it's, and let's just jump into it. Let's jump into the moment we are speaking of.
The moment.
The moment. Katara gets her man, Yan Ra, and has the chance to throw ice daggers at him.
For sure.
Chooses not to. I think we all can agree, good on Katara. But some people might be like, no.
No, he deserved that.
What would Kyoshi do, right?
Or would she?
I don't know.
I haven't read the books yet, so.
I'm 8 chapters into the first one, and I like it. I think you get this powerful moment, and I think that as much as we say it, and as much as it gets repetitive, I think it really, when you talk about your cornerstone, your values, acting inside of those, is going to be a really good motivator. What are those values? And again, for you, even if someone's acting outside of your values, it is your responsibility to act in service of those values. What are the things that are most important to you? If it's love, belonging, compassion, whatever it is, that needs to be a cornerstone in your decision-making process.
That shaped all of my notes for this episode, honestly. So, the beginning of the episode, Katara is acting outside of what I would say her values typically are.
Which we do
right?
when we are scared, when we are angry, when we are hungry, when survival's on the line.
And I want to talk about that. But
Yeah.
I think so what is causing her to be outside of her values in this moment? And the trigger for me that I am sensing is this: she feels betrayed by Zuko.
There's anger there.
And there is lingering anger and blame towards Zuko, who is the embodiment of the Fire Nation to her, right? But it's not at Zuko. I think it's starts there.
Well, he even calls it out. He even says to Sokka, I think she's dealing with a lot, and I think I'm the cat, I'm the punching bag for that. And first of all, let's talk about Zuko's emotional growth to be able to sit there and say
your boy Iroh is a good teacher. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
To be able to sit there and say and recognize she's yelling at me, and I think I understand. One, I understand that I made her mad, and two, I understand that I'm also getting the brunt of all of this. And I'm I want to help her. That's his response. Is I want to help her.
I think it's beautiful.
Then that kind of steers a little bit away when he starts they talk about revenge versus forgiveness, and Aang's we really need to give forgiveness, and Zuko's well, okay, Mr. Air Nomad Temple guy. As a person who needed and looked for that forgiveness not 3 episodes ago, right? And is still looking for it. So for him to be no forgiveness here, it's kind of but we do that. It's not unrealistic.
Sure.
At the same time, very ironic.
Yeah. I mean, going back to this moment with Katara, I think one of the things that's really worth highlighting is that when we are in a place that is causing us to be outside of our values, that's when we are more prone to revenge mentality.
Correct.
Right? And I think that this is a really great case study in that, because we see it. Katara is cornered in this moment. She has to spend time with Zuko. He's being praised. Every time he gets a moment of praise from one of the group, it feels like a dagger to her, because it's not that they're praising him, it's that they're praising everything that he represents.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's...
when he hasn't atoned to her
that's
yet.
really tough to navigate.
Right.
Right? I just think that's really important. And Aang names it. Aang, she says, no, I need to go do this. And... You don't understand. And Aang's no, I do. It's unbelievable pain and rage. I felt this with Appa. I did. He does all the things that are recommended to be empathetic towards one another.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He and he does it he speeds through them, but he kind of goes through the steps.
Well, and sometimes you don't want to do it as quickly as he did.
You
don't
have to
necessarily
save space, right?
Yeah, so you don't necessarily want to say, I know how you feel. All these things happened to me. I also feel pain, which valid and yes. And sometimes you just need to say, I've been there before. You're right. It stinks.
Let's sit here for a second.
And sit at that.
Well, and that's what it is. And that's what I was going to name, is that Aang is going through the motions and doing what's right. And he's trying to turn the light on by doing it.
A little too fast.
So it's hey,
sit in the darkness.
Let's turn on the light, because this is what we want to do. I want to get through this, right? And so revenge is the wrong answer, and blah, 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 blah. And in that moment, Katara's no, he's a monster. He deserves it. And so what happened there is he says, you're starting to sound like Jet. And that moment hit hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because when we start to act like people who in our past we have condemned for their behavior, and I'm going to be so defensive if someone says I'm acting like someone that I
The
can't
door
get on
immediately
board with.
shuts.
Exactly.
So we need to not do that.
Yes, and she was.
Yes.
She was starting to use dehumanizing language. She was starting to use the same language that Jet used in Jet's episode in whatever season that is, right?
That would be season 1.
Yeah.
I think episode 10.
Well done. Good for you. But it's rough. That moment's rough, and it's just we see this progression. Like revenge becomes easier when we dehumanize.
Yes.
So my question is, in this moment, would it have been more appropriate as a response to Katara if we didn't want her to go on this mission? If that's the goal, it may not be the goal, but like, how do we get her to humanize Yan-Ra?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that's the question for me is when revenge is the object of someone's thought process, is the answer to that humanizing the cause of said revenge? And I do not want to diminish the fact that, like, there are some times when that is definitely not the right answer, right? Like, you want to empathize and let it be, and, like, they're
not in a place. Again, the light is not ready to go on.
This is not trying to, like, get them to accept what happened to them. It is is that a source of healing? Is humanizing that person a source of healing? Can it be? And maybe not, right? Like, this is oddly tied to our forgiveness episode, and because
I mean, they're counterparts.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Tell me, what are you thinking right now? What's going through your head?
He asked a question that I really enjoyed, but they blow past it. Aang
Okay.
says, "What do you think this is going to accomplish?"
Yes, that's a great question.
I think that's a wonderful question. He does it a little bit more pointed, a little bit more
It's
like
accusatory.
Correct. What do you think this is going to accomplish versus what do you hope that this accomplishes? Because that's a question that will really allow someone to dive in and think, well, I want closure.
Because
she says that
question.
I want closure. What does closure look like? I don't know. Let's figure that out, or try to figure that out, prior to you confronting him.
Well, and I think one of the things that we learned from suicide prevention education is naming things is important. And so talking about it is important. And so when you're talking about the death of another human, right, saying, I think naming it is important. Saying, hey, what will happen if this person, like, you want revenge, you want this person to be gone, right? What will it accomplish to literally take his life? And I think we see from Katara through this progression of the episode that's not what she wants, right? That's not what she wants. She wants justice. She wants this system to have never happened that put this man in this place to make that decision, right? This man is not, like, is a problem. He's not the problem, right?
Correct.
And
he's a symptom of a much bigger problem.
Yes, exactly.
Which is the cultural and imperialism of what's going on in this.
I'm
nation.
sensing that we're going to get some pushback just from listeners, and I'm excited to hear it because this is a complicated issue.
Well, it's one of those things that you feel so emotionally, right?
Yeah.
This idea of someone did so much wrong to me, I need them to feel the pain that I am feeling. And the reality is, and this is tough, that doesn't fix it. That doesn't make your pain go away.
I mean, as Aang says, it's like a two-headed rat viper, right?
Which is, that's cartoony. That's a cartoony imagery. That is an animal that we know. But in the points there, and it's causing someone else that pain does not make your pain go away. It might numb it.
It's playing off
but
an
it's not
actual
gonna
quote.
Stop it.
Right? It's playing off the actual quote, or not actual quote, but like a quote from an actual human of, it's like taking poison and expecting the other person to die.
It's Nelson Mandela,
right?
I believe.
But it's one of those things where, like, yeah, I mean, it's tough because forgiving Yan-Ra, what good will that do? Right?
And that's the other thing. I don't necessarily... she says, like, I'm never going to forgive him. I don't think she has to.
I agree.
I don't think that you have to live in this moment of, I have to forgive everyone who's ever done something wrong to me to move on with my life or to heal. I don't think forgiveness is necessarily the option. I do think owning it as a part of your story and rumbling with it is something that you need to do.
Yes.
So you do need to rumble with those feelings. You do need to hash out why you feel a certain way and how to navigate those feelings, because feelings are biological responses They're not just this weird
It's communication,
it's
right?
Your body is telling you things. You have to navigate those things to be able to deal with that type of trauma. You don't necessarily have to forgive. Doesn't mean you can't. Doesn't mean that you might feel better if you forgive. But it is more about rumbling with those feelings on a regular basis and learning how to navigate them than it is forgive and forget, because that's not a thing. I love the moment where she says, I will never forgive him, because I don't think she has to.
Yeah.
She will need to rumble with those feelings.
Yes.
For the rest of her life.
And I think a lot of times when people say forgive and forget, what I think could also be part of the communication is this is affecting you in a way that's harming you, and I want to see you be able to let go of this from control. I don't want this to control you anymore.
Correct.
Right? And so people assume and ascribe forgiveness as the cure to that, and that's not always the cure, right? Sometimes it is forgiveness, and that allows you to let it go. But I think sometimes it's also reckoning with it, rumbling with it, and then making meaning. Making meaning does not necessarily mean that you are forgiving that person, but you are able to take meaning making out of that. And I think it really kind of speaks to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote on Death and Dying, and that was the book that started the 5 stages of grief, right? Recently, before she died, she partnered with David Kessler, and they came out with On Grief and Grieving, and that was like honing in on grief specifically. And then David Kessler, very recently, in the past couple of years, came out with a 6th stage, right, which is meaning making. And that 6th stage, meaning making, has been like a really important addition, I think, to the grieving process. And I think it's the similar thing here, right? When we are in this place, like Katara is still grieving, right? The moment where she is in this grief mode, she is still feeling the pain, and this has been overwhelming for her. And she's living next to Zuko, who is embodying the origination of that pain. And so that pain button has been hit, and she is in it. And part of that process is meaning making, right? She goes through anger. She goes through these depressive episodes. She goes through like bargaining. Well, I have to do this and you have to let me go. And I'm going to those stages are happening. It's not necessarily sequential, and they aren't sequential. And yet meaning making is a big part of it. And so I just think forgiveness isn't always the answer, but meaning making.
That's what she needed. She needed to be able to justify, why would someone do this? And I think that's where she gets her quote unquote closure, by seeing him and saying, you were small, you were empty, you were hollow. Now I'm not trying to name call. That's not one of those things that I'm going to do.
Sure.
And I'm not faulting her for it. You know what I mean?
She showed more maturity in this episode than I think I've been able to show in my entire lifetime.
Fans focus on the snap at Sokka.
We have to touch on this, right?
And as a moment of, Katara's so annoying.
You didn't love her like I did.
And how dare you say that to Sokka? And clearly he recognizes he's hurt. But we do that.
People do that.
Those things.
Absolutely.
And we especially do them to the people that we're closest with.
Exactly.
Because we feel more comfortable. We wouldn't say that type of thing to a stranger. We're not going to say something very hurtful to a stranger, but I don't know if it's that we feel like we can get away with it, but we say it. We say those things to our family members more often than we say them to our, coworkers. We say them to our close friends more often than we say them to, the person we see once a week. So it happens, and we do that. And so that moment is so realistic, and I almost guarantee every single one of us can pinpoint a time in our life where we have done that, where we have said that thing to someone. Maybe not intentionally trying to be hurtful, but being okay with that it was hurtful, or immediately recognizing how hurtful it was and backpedaling. But we've done that to a family member, to a friend before, and regretted it. And I think that's a moment why people hate it so much or hate that moment is because
it's too real.
we see ourselves in it.
That's why I think people don't like Korra.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We're going to get to that. So I want to keep talking about this for a second. So what causes her to say that, right? And so, like, what is the impetus, right? She's being confronted. She is on the defensive right now. And when we're backed into a corner, she goes into fight, flight, or freeze.
She's fighting.
And she's fighting, right? And it's one of those things where I find that to be incredibly, like, that is a moment where we need to recognize that she is backed into a corner here. We need to recognize that she's feeling defensive. We need to recognize that, because if we can name that and see that, we are able to better understand why she said that.
Well, and she's meaning making.
Yes.
In her head,
yes.
In her head right now is what she's doing. I am so livid. And if you are not livid, either there are two possible outcomes to this. Either one, I'm overreacting and I'm in the wrong, or two, you didn't love her like I did and that's why you're not this angry about it. And so instead of saying I'm in the wrong, it has to be the other option in this moment, or I'm not willing to accept that I'm in the wrong, and so it's got to be the other option. It's got to be option B.
Or there's more options.
Yeah.
But when we're in that mode, we don't consider those.
Correct.
We can't slow down enough.
There are definitely more options, and in that moment, when you're in fight or flight, it is way more binary.
It's tunnel vision.
Right, exactly. These are the only two options that could possibly be happening.
Yeah,
it's an us versus them mentality, which is dangerous.
A comparison is the death of a lot of things, and I think love is in that, right?
Yep.
The comparison leads to betrayal in a sense, and she is mad at Zuko for this betrayal, but she just betrayed Sokka in a way, and I think that it's easier to in this moment for her to be forgiven because we can see that she's in pain. But I think that one of those things, like, they didn't see how much Zuko was in pain after he made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't see how much pain Zuko was in after he made that decision when he betrayed her, right? And we see, like, Sokka doesn't even bring this up. He's like, I see that she's in pain. This is my headcanon, but, like, I think that he just knows that this is really painful for her, and it's immediate, like, release of this is not about me.
Well, and we don't see that he doesn't linger on it very often. He says Katara. And then after they leave, he tells Aang, like, I was really impressed with the way that you handled that situation.
Yeah.
And seems very much understanding.
Talk about the emotional maturity. You talked about Zuko, but, like, think about Sokka from there to
Aang,
now.
Sokka, Zuko.
Yeah, that's fair. All of them. They've all grown a ton. Okay, so on the journey that Zuko takes Katara on to go find the Southern Raiders, we see Katara's not sleeping.
Little Aang moment.
What are your thoughts on that?
Daydreams and nightmares all over again.
Well, to me, you mentioned this earlier in passing, but, like, it reminds me of this HALT acronym that we've talked about before. Hungry, when we're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, right? Those are the moments where we act outside of our values.
Yes, those things accelerate that. It's like the opposite of click, right? Like those things, like those things accelerate these harsh feelings.
Exactly.
Which is like that's why there's so much drama on Survivor. Is people act differently when you are angry, lonely, and tired.
Yeah.
And so when all those things,
angry, lonely, I like that.
Hangry. When you are hangry, when you're hangry, lonely, and tired.
For sure. Yeah, I just think that that's really important to note. I also think it's important to note that the stories we tell ourselves when we are in this moment lead us to make decisions that exacerbate those things. So Katara made the decision to stay awake, right?
Yes.
When she could have chosen to take a nap. So,
yes.
What would have happened had she slept?
Have you ever had that moment before?
Yes.
Where that moment where you're upset?
Yes.
And you want to stay upset?
Yes.
And so even though you know or are aware of something that might be helpful, you refuse to do it.
This is my
so
point.
That you can stay angry.
Yeah.
It has happened to me.
Oh, it's absolutely happened to me.
A coworker makes me upset, and so instead of going and talking to them about it, which I know is the right thing to do, I'm going to vent to other people.
Yeah.
because I want to be angry.
And that's only going to make you feel bad because you're venting, and then you're like, and then it feels like, oh no, now I'm gossiping on this person.
Well, I'm hoping to feel
And then-
justified in the moment, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
hoping to, I'm so in the right, and it doesn't do anything to solve. What is this going to accomplish?
I love
is
that
the
question. Yeah.
It is
I
tough
just-
to ask that in the moment.
Well, it's also like one of those things where my favorite thing about this episode is Zuko. Zuko is the most accepting human. Like, oh my goodness. Like, there is so little judgment that comes from him all episode. And it's really beautiful.
Yes, sometimes he's enabling the behavior in a way that
Yes, and right, he's taking her like, hey, she wouldn't have gone to do this without him.
she probably couldn't have gone to.
That's
do
what.
this
So
without him.
that's what. Exactly.
But
She couldn't have gone to.
I
do,
think
like,
the moment I'm referring to is what I've already called out was when Aang is trying to have a conversation and Zuko's like, no logic right now. We're on a mission, and that's kind of his headspace. And I think it's because he's.
Is that because that's what he would have wanted in his if he were to like back when
I think
he was going
sees that
through
this is a moment of potential reconciliation between him and Katara, and so he wants to see it through.
You know, I do not think that's the only motivation. I think that is
Rarely
some,
is there only one motivation.
Yes, and maybe I'm arguing that this potentially is more of a motivator than that. But like I really think that he has sensed profound empathy and that has been so healing for him, and that space of non-judgment, that space of letting people let me make my Iroh let him make so many errors.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the first 2 seasons, he let him make so many errors. And some could say that Iroh was enabling that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And he was doing the best that he knew how.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Zuko doing the best that he knows how.
Right. And he's got a deep connection when it comes to lost mothers.
Yeah, like
Right.
there's just so much empathy to be had here. And I just think he models non-judgment in a way that I've never been able to do myself. And I think that's why I'm just envious of him, because I'm like Aang. But forgiveness is divine and you shouldn't do it because forgiveness, and like that's my gut reaction.
Can you imagine? Point.
I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, like I'm the Aang in this moment. I'm the admonishing. I'm the one who's like, hey, I'm not gonna stop you, but like you shouldn't do it.
Right.
But Zuko's like, I'm with you and I support you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna help you do what you feel is best. And that's hard to do. That's so hard to do. When he sees her bloodbend, that the ship captain that isn't Yanra,
Mm-hmm.
like you see his eyes go wide, and then he just gets right back on board. And like whether that's again, like should he have had a conversation with her? Hey, Katara, this seems
This
outside
is
of your
scary.
values, right? But like at the same time, you know, it really reminds me of. I've been rewatching Grey's Anatomy recently, and one, I love that show. Two, we could do. That's what we should do. We could do Bending Not Breaking, Grey's Anatomy edition.
Well, if that's Max's choice for an upcoming Patreon episode, maybe.
But the
Max,
deal.
you a big Grey's Anatomy guy? Do you want to watch an episode of Grey's?
I don't know. What does Gray look like?
Why is that relevant?
She's beautiful. It's Ellen Pompeo.
Okay,
Okay, we're moving on. Okay, so I forgot what I was talking about.
What's that song called?
It's Pompeii by Bastille.
Ellen Pompeo by
Bastille.
So I forgot what I was talking about, but
Grey's Anatomy.
Helen and
oh,
Peo.
it reminds me of the relationship
Pompeo.
between Christina Yang and Meredith Grey. So this is like diving deep between like Avatar fandom and Grey's fandom. So if you overlap here, this is for
those
you.
4 people are really happy right now.
This is for you. But like their relationship,
Probably more than 4 people.
their relationship is really beautiful in that it's not always something that I would advise, but like they have a zero judgment relationship. And the way that I can phrase that is when Meredith says, "Hey, I broke up with X person," and Christina says, "All right, do we hate him, or am I on board with them?" And so like it's not a let me feel this out. It's like I am on your side no matter what. And there's just a little bit of like camaraderie that happens in that's really beautiful. And is that always healthy? The answer is no. But it's one of those things where like that's in it.
Survey says
That in and of itself is a really beautiful thing. And I have been thinking about that for a long time, because how much do you want that friend that's just like always? I want friends that challenge me, but I also want that friend that's just like, I'm with you.
And that's the hard part about all this, right? Because there's moments where it is much better for me to challenge you or to you to challenge me on that feeling.
And who's a better option, right?
And there are times where, yes, I know that is the best option, and don't do that.
Commiserate with me for a second, right?
But I think what you have to do is, when does that become common enemy intimacy, and when does that become, no, let's really look at this decision. So, yeah, we're going to hate him right now. And that's not what the relationship is built on, so that's not really common enemy intimacy. And there still needs to come to a place where you grow past that, or you get to a point where I can see that as I'm going to hate him with you. But then maybe a little bit later we can turn the light on and talk about this.
Well, and I think that's what's interesting about Zuko is we see that he challenges Katara throughout like the series and through like even for the rest of the season. Like they challenge each other. It's not that he's just like complicit and on board with every decision she makes, but in this moment he is on board. And I just think that that's something that is worth noting, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we could dive in more to the bloodbending, but I really think that really just falls into her acting outside of her values, because
100%.
she's halting in that moment. She is angry and tired and feels lonely. She definitely feels alone in this. We know that even though there's people that can empathize with her, I feel like she feels like she's on an island.
Well, and I think that's really a neat thing to think about in the sense that where is she hitting rock bottom? Is it during bloodbending? Is it when she's walking away from that bloodbending moment where she's like, oh, man.
There's a good chance that had she not
because she didn't do it.
Had she
with
not
Jan
done
Ra.
the bloodbending, had she not done it then and felt I didn't like that, or she might have gone further with Jan Ra. I think the bloodbending might have been like there's my boundary. So I know that's my boundary.
Yeah. So I wonder, is that time, that I don't know, that space between something that's worth noting, right? And I think the answer for me is like the more space you have between your feeling at your lowest point where you're like, I'm like seeking revenge to the point where you have to enact it. To me, it feels like the more space that's there, the more opportunity for change and stepping out of it. It gives you more and more like chances to step out. Count of Monte Cristo is probably not a good example to bring up here, but I would argue that that's more an argument for justice than it is revenge.
Yeah, because what can Katara truly do to hold him accountable? So all this being said, I'm glad she didn't kill him, right? And you wish he's held accountable in some way.
So what are the options, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And she doesn't have anything she can do in that moment to hold him accountable. All she can do is to work to dismantle the system. And so that's where the focus needs to go.
If she were in Earth Kingdom territory or Water Tribe territory, she might be able to like capture and bring him to a trial where they can determine it there, right?
Correct. Not here.
Yeah,
everything that he did,
but he's in the Fire Nation,
justified,
and there he's probably some like a war hero. He got rid of the Last Airbender in the Water Tribe.
It seems strange that his retirement led to him farming with his mother, that we could potentially call names if we let ourselves. I've got zero. I mean,
I think...
What's the most generous assumption you can give her?
Well, I'm curious, what's the most generous assumption of him? Like, okay, like, you are in a house where you are taking this abuse from your mother. What seems to be could be only today, or it could be a regular occurrence, based off of his comment saying, hey, you could take revenge by taking my mother. I'm sensing there's some trauma there.
We also know that it's likely he is not a reformed human based off of that comment.
Sure. And
he was very quick and willing to give up his own family members for safety.
Well, and I think that's ultimately what turned Katara off from being like, you're suffering enough. I don't need to take your life.
Right.
Right? But like, I'm just curious because I wonder what his life was like growing up, and how much of a factor did that play?
It plays a factor. There's
We will never know.
No, all the data points that nurture plays a factor. We know this.
We do know this.
Nurture plays a factor.
Absolutely.
A pretty massive factor. Actually, like a whole lot of a factor.
Yes.
We know this.
There's
to
a
be
lot of
true.
data on this.
There's so much data. And it is very important to understand. There's two things I want to highlight because I think they fall into a similar thing, and I meant to say it earlier.
Cool.
Nurture matters. It matters in the way that people behave. It points to behaviors. It doesn't mean we don't get to hold people accountable. I don't think we should be vengeful. We shouldn't be taking lives because of it. But we should be holding people accountable. I want to go back to Halt real fast.
Love that.
Halt is not permission to behave poorly.
Oh, no. That is an awareness piece.
It is an awareness piece of, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired?
That is a mantra to be like, I made a mistake. Okay, check in.
It is not okay if I yell at a partner because I'm hungry.
I'm hungry.
It might be the reason why, but it's not an excuse for us to do that. And I don't want us to leave this episode and be like, anytime I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired,
It's an excuse.
I get to yell at someone because I've got, a reason to do it now.
I feel like one of our themes from the whole podcast is you can be empathetic and hold people accountable, right? And I think this is a moment, right? Like where just because we understand where someone is coming from and we understand why someone is making a decision that they're making doesn't mean that we're going to let them do it because we understand. It means we can be compassionate in our response when we hold them accountable. Drop mic.
Yep. Anything else you want to add in this episode? Any revenge that you saw in Sokka's paint me like one of your French girl moments?
Ooh, I forgot we didn't even talk about that.
That just happens.
Oh man,
what a moment.
There's two things. One's small and one's
I mean,
probably
I didn't
a
have
larger
anything
question.
really to tackle on. So yeah.
The flashback, like the Fire Nation are always wearing masks, and in the fight between the Water Tribe and the Fire Nation when the Southern Raiders invade,
Yes,
they're all wearing masks. And so I just, like, again, we've probably talked about this on our mask episode, but I was so long ago that I just thought it was worth re-mentioning. Like, does it make it easier to commit crimes when your face is covered?
I think so, yes.
Right? And I agree.
Because even in those moments, you are a part of the whole. It's the same idea wearing uniforms. It's the same. When you're a part of a whole, you don't feel like less of a cog. It's not an individual decision. It's
more than that, though.
It's the group decision. It's the mentality. It's the culture.
I would say taking that even further is covering your face, right? Because it removes anonymity. Anonymity.
It's where Nemo sleeps.
Yeah, but like that is a crucial part of being able to put yourself in a position where you're like. I wonder if it's easier for the soldiers. Like, I wonder if it was their decision, right? Instead of saying you need to wear masks, it's like because I just imagine the subversion of like being able to look someone in the eye when on the battlefield and see their face and be like, we shouldn't be doing this, and they've removed that as a possibility. Right.
I mean, I still think you can still look someone in the eye, but again, if your face is covered,
it's just like there's so much.
They're not looking back at you.
90% of communication comes from body language. That like is that?
We looked it up on an episode a while ago. It's something like
it's a lot, but like
tone of voice and all that stuff is nonverbal still. Like
yeah, okay, but more like I just think that I think revenge is easier when it's anonymous. We see like yeah. That's all I have on that one. And then my second question is there's something that Jan Ra says, like something along the lines of you deserve to take revenge. You deserve this. And is like I think my question is revenge ever something that we deserve?
No.
Tell me more.
No. I think my hope, and and it's such a challenging philosophy. I think my hope is that everyone has a chance of redemption. We have to, and I think we'll get to it, but we have to be able to assume that there's a chance of good in everyone.
And I think
that doesn't mean you don't take precautions. It doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable. But I think we have to do that.
Well, and I think we have to make the distinction. You deserve justice. You deserve human dignity.
Correct.
You deserve
to heal.
to be loved. You deserve to feel like you belong in a place. You deserve healing.
You deserve to feel safe.
You do not deserve the other person's life.
Correct.
Right? And
Correct.
I think that that's just a really important distinction. And we're talking in extremes, right? We're talking about taking lives as a form of revenge. There are smaller forms of revenge, but I think the premise is still the same.
Do the smaller forms of revenge, do they live inside your value system? Truly.
Yeah.
Right?
Not yes.
A spouse
but like,
cheats on me.
I agree.
Does stabbing their car tires live inside my value system? Probably not.
Probably not. Probably not.
And that's a little one, right? That's $100 damage. I stabbed your front tire. And that doesn't live inside my value system.
But
what is this going to accomplish? And if it is, I'm trying to exact hurt or pain, then is that living inside your value system?
And is condoning it, how does that affect values too? For being that best friend that's like, you, like, this bad thing, you just
go
did
do
this,
that, Carrie
you
Underwood.
just did this bad thing.
Yeah.
Hey, you're right. He deserved that. I think that's a empathic miss. And that's something, my girl Brene talks about.
I love that it's an empathic miss. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. Right? But those are just chances for us to do be
Yeah. Yes.
And so.
Dang.
And it's hard.
I
Fight
almost
or
got
flight,
through an
man.
episode without
It's
talking
hard.
about her.
Brene?
Yeah. My girl.
She's great.
I love her.
She's great. All right. Max, anything to add for this episode?
We should add a Patreon thing where, like, we talk about Brene.
You want to go through all of the online classes with us?
Yeah.
No. Max, anything to add this episode?
Not at this time.
All right. Well, we'll be right back. We'll do, I believe we have a voicemail,
We sure do.
and we will be back and listen to that in just a moment.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We are so excited to be here. We're almost done with season 3. We didn't know we were going to get to this point, but it's because of you that we're here. Thank you for listening and helping us do that. You can find us on really cool places. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. BNB_pod is where we will provide you with fun daily memes, quotes, and other fun things. I do also want to take a moment to tell you about our Patreon page, because that is what helps us continue to grow and bring really cool guests in, like the ones you've been hearing so far. Our tier 1 allows us to invite you into a Facebook group where we have really awesome discussion questions. We have a chance to talk about lens choices, and we just get to let you bring us into the conversation. Tier 2 is where we have episodes coming in early for our patrons. We also release bonus episodes. Max, our producer, releases really cool Max's Choice episodes where we do the same thing that we do for this, except with his choice. So you should try that out. We also do little bonus episodes. Tier 3, we have this really awesome opportunity to do live episodes with the team, and that has been really fun to do so far. We hope that you'll join us for that next month, and I look forward to it. And I really hope that you know that we care about you. A portion of our proceeds always go to a charitable organization that our patrons vote on to help us support. And thank you again. Thank you for being here. We love doing Bending Not Breaking, and we're going to get back to the episode right now. Thanks so much. See you next time.
You have reached the voicemail box of
Bending Not Breaking.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hello, Sunshine, Ben, and of course Max. I'm Hannah, a long-time listener, first-time caller. Something that is a topic for me that I feel is brought up a lot is the labeling of Katara as the mom of the group, or being motherly. There's two things that come to mind for me. One is that Katara explicitly states that this is not how she wants to be perceived, as we see in the episode The Runaway. And part of it is I think that Katara is aware of the trauma she's been through, losing her mom, and how she's had to step up, but also that she is just a teenager existing in a group with other teenagers and wants to have a sense of belonging in that group. And calling her a mom or bossy or any of those things really kind of separates her out from the other kids, and she tells us she does not want to feel that way. So it's interesting to me that she tells us that, and still that label very much is thrown at her. 2, why are we so quick to label girls or women who take charge as being moms, or acting like someone else's mom? And it's not that being a mom is a bad thing, but we don't label boys or men who step up as dads. We just label them as leaders. And I think of the episode The Desert, because this is the episode that I often see memed with, Sokka in his cactus state and Katara, wrangling everybody in, and her, this is a mom having to wrangle her wild friends into place. And really what I see is Katara seeing her friends dealing with trauma or dealing with a lack of confidence or a lack of control, making bad decisions, and she steps up and she takes control of the situation and guides everybody to safety as best she can, while keeping everyone together, and arguably gets everybody out of the desert alive. And that is a strong, clear, and fair leader. And I would just really like to know what your thoughts are on this and how we can all kind of shift our thinking when it comes to women in leadership roles, especially for our girl Katara. Anyway, I love this show. Thank you so much for taking the time to make this, and I cannot wait to hear more.
Wow, Hannah, you are speaking to things that we probably have not done enough justice with on the show, frankly.
Oh, we definitely haven't. Thank you so much for your voicemail.
One of the things, there's several things that I loved. One, I love how you called out the fact that she doesn't want to be perceived as motherly, especially in that episode. And like, if I recall, the response from, I think Toph was like something along the lines of, "You're too sensitive." And man, that line is so triggering for me. And to really put it into perspective in that moment, like, I think we talked about it, but we just did not spend enough time on it. So, like, what was your response to that?
She's so right.
Yeah.
This idea
Clearly.
of we don't do this to males are leaders. We don't tell them that they're fathers.
Yeah, that was the second point I wanted to make.
And I
for
think
sure.
for me it's this moment of, are we pushing, even subconsciously based on a society, are we pushing people into, you don't have value unless you're a mother if you are female, right? Like, is this a thing where we're going to tell you you're a mother and you're very motherly, and this is a thing because that's what we want you to do, because the workforce and leading and all that stuff is for the men, and patriarchy, yeah, and reality is that's not. Well, yes, no, correct, no. Yeah, out of context on that, like 3-second clip is going to be very not good for me. But I think, do we do that subconsciously? Do we do that as a society? And we're telling girls and women that you behave this way and you need to be motherly, and that's where you have value.
Well, and I'll lift me up as a case study.
No, we're not in it. No. We have to shatter that.
I 100% agree, and I'm guilty of this. Like, as soon as I heard you say we don't call people out for being fatherly, I was like, oh, I've totally called people motherly, but I've never called somebody like,
you're very fatherly.
You're such a dad, like in the sense that like they're being like so responsible, and if it does come out, it's like you're being dad as in like, dad jokes.
Well, it's also, do we not expect dads to behave that way?
Well, and that's exactly right. And so, like, how?
No, it's cool if dads are cold and aloof and making the money, and that's
and they're
what
making
supposed
dad.
to do.
All they do
is
make dad jokes, and
yeah.
they have dad bod, and there's no there's that. All of that language is so detrimental, and it's part of patriarchal language that you are absolutely naming, Hannah, and we need to do a better job of calling it out.
Yeah. So thank you.
For sure. Yeah,
Thank you for
please
bringing
send
those points to
in
the table.
more of these points. We like them. This is why we're trying to have more females on the show.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. Let's jump into our devotion.
Devotion time. Cool. So
revenge
through a lens of Earth. Oh dear, I haven't thought about this.
I think for me, I have, so I'll go first. It's going to seem simple, and I feel like I've said it before, but I also think it's worth reevaluating on a regular basis, is what are your cornerstones, what are your values, what are your foundational pieces? And if you are going to behave in a way that is meaningful to them, you need to focus on those and have those as an awareness piece when you are making decisions. My goal this week is to do just that. And so I can live into those values because I can name them and I can talk about them and I can look through the lens of when I make decisions, am I doing that through love and belonging? And that is the foundation for any decision that I make.
Yeah.
And so I think that's my goal this week.
I'm gonna hop on a similar train with we've had Cricket talk about protective factors. She specifically mentioned them in the beach episode. I think we briefly touched on them in the last episode, but one, thank you, Cricket, for giving us language. But
great. She's gonna come join us all the time, and I love it.
Yeah. But these idea of protective factors that we can build in, and one of the things like this past week, I've been entrenched with school, and it's like the first exam season of the semester for me, and I've had I have for the first time in school felt inadequate, and when I feel inadequate, I'm likely to make decisions that are I'm in a position where I'm more likely to make decisions that I don't feel comfortable with. So I need to remember my foundation, i.e. Earth, right? I need to remember that foundation and the structural things that keep me supported, right?
Yeah.
And that's like when I'm feeling down, what do I need to do to, we talked about this on the Facebook group actually, or a Facebook group. Somebody was like, one of the memes recently that we posted was, how do you fill your cup? And I was like, I had an epiphany when I was typing a response. They were like, what about you? I was like, well, I fill my cup by going outside. And then I realized that that's not what fills my cup. That's what cleans the cup so that I'm not drinking dirty water. I need to go outside to clean my cup, and then
something else fills
fill
it.
it by like having community and building, like having friendship. And that's what fills my cup. But I can't do that. I'm not capable of doing that if my cup is dirty. And so that's what I want to do. That's what I want to focus on. I want to focus on my foundation, really make sure my structural supports are in place to keep me standing.
Yeah. Important.
Yeah.
Play piano. Hang out with friends.
Yeah. Those
Safely
things.
while wearing a mask and maintaining 6 feet of distance.
Those are the things.
But yes, right?
Yeah. Gratitude.
Time to get to gratitude because we got to wrap this episode up.
Gratitude.
Mine's simple, except not so simple. It's just Katara.
Gratitude.
That decision, the decision she makes to not kill him, the decision she makes to not hurt Yanra, is incredibly courageous, incredibly brave, and incredibly difficult. And so all the gratitude to her for being able to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm grateful. I mean, I feel like I've said this all episode, but I'm really grateful for Zuko. I'm grateful for the non-judgmental space he creates for her to go through this and get to the point where she can do what you just talked about. To get to the point, like, he gave her that space, and what a gift that he was able to give her. And I think that's really beautiful. And so I'm grateful for Zuko for that.
I'm grateful for you. And I'm grateful for Max. Max, thank you for being here.
I'm grateful for Max.
Join us next week as we look at the Ember Island players through a lens of humor.
Humor.
That was my band's name in high school.
The Ember Island players?
Yes.
Interesting.
I don't believe you.
I thought so too.
The world is small. Did you have someone in that band that liked Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Likely.
Not as far as I know.
Not you.
No.
You've never seen the episode.
Of what?
I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
This has been Pruitt.
And this has been Bending, Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.
Bye.